House Speaker decision time. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Laura Bischoff, State House reporter for the Dayton Daily News. Andy Child, State House reporter for Ohio Public Radio. Derek Clay, Democratic strategist, and Shannon Jones, former state legislator. Another week has passed and Ohio still lacks a permanent Speaker of the Ohio House, one of the most powerful positions in state government. But it looks like House Republicans are moving closer to a decision or being forced to make a decision. You know the story by now. State Reps Ryan Smith and Larry Householder want the Speaker's job next year. Smith says he has the votes now to take over for Cliff Rosenberger, who resigned in April. But Householder and his supporters have kept Ryan from getting the needed 50 votes from Republicans. The stalemate has prompted interim Speaker Kirk Scheuring to say, come Wednesday, House Republicans have two choices: pick a Speaker or change the rules to let him, Scheuring, serve as Speaker until the end of the term. Laura Bischoff, what is the status? Will we have a Speaker by the end of next week?
I don't know. I mean, I thought we were going to have a Speaker by now. We're by next Wednesday, when this decision is supposed to be made, it will be 57 days since Cliff Rosenberger's resignation became effective, and I thought that there would have been a resolution on this much earlier than now. I think that it's becoming a problem for the Republicans because, you know, there's like a pileup, a big legislative logjam of like more than 100 bills, including some really important ones that impact, you know, millions of Ohioans, and it's becoming a major issue for the Republicans. They need to get this fixed.
Andy, why do they need to change the rules to allow Kirk Scheuring, the now interim Speaker, to become permanent Speaker? Why can't they just vote for Kirk Scheuring?
Well, why can't they just vote for Kirk Scheuring? Because he's well, they could do any of these things. They could just hold a vote. That's the whole problem, is that they could hold a vote. The fear, according to Kirk Scheuring, is that he doesn't want to make it look like a circus because he doesn't have that lockdown supermajority to just have an automatic person come in and be Speaker. If they have to hold one vote and they don't have the majority they need, they'll have to hold another vote after another. And I think he's afraid that's going to look like there's a lot of dissension among his own caucus. But we've already seen it.
Look like there's dissension?
Yeah, right.
Well, one of the big problems, though, is that if they change the House rules, there's some thought that maybe that's going to conflict with the Constitution about whether or not the Speaker pro tem can also act as the presiding officer. All this kind of parliamentary rigmarole. What the danger is that they start passing bills under this other system, the Plan B system, and maybe there's a challenge to one of the bills. If House Bill 123, which is the payday lending bill, becomes law, and there's any kind of question about its legitimacy, I would expect that the industry would sue to block it.
People have said that if you start passing bills under a changed rule, then you might as well put an asterisk next to every single bill because they're all up for debate.
And you mentioned that this is a circus. It's already been a circus. You know, the only losers in this whole thing are the taxpayers. The taxpayers are having to wait for a power struggle that it really doesn't make any sense at all. I understand that you have, you know, number of people that are competing for the Speaker's role, but the business of the people has to continue to move forward.
Well, and that's certainly true, but I also think the House Republican caucus is a big loser in this situation. I mean, look, having been in these caucuses before, when you have, you know, nearly the votes you need and nobody's even close to competing with you, it's tradition and convention that the caucus gets behind there to avoid these sorts of situations. And because they haven't done that and have allowed this to linger, they've really jeopardized their ability to do business in the future, because now a handful of members of the caucus could shut down debate and votes on any issue.
And it's Larry Householder who's the force here. I think he's the difference in this. In past caucuses, you haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't had the personality or the rough and tumble politician that Larry Householder is, and he's the one forcing.
But
this gridlock.
And that may be true, but I don't know what he has to get. He wants to lead this caucus next term. Well, if he were successful in doing that under the situation that's been created, now 10 people, and there's a lot more than 10 that aren't for Larry Householder right now, can shut down his caucus. And to your point, for the betterment of Ohio people to debate and discuss and vote on matters that affect all Ohioans.
And it is a unique situation to be in. If this were in November, I don't think there would be as much tension or holdouts. They would just end up, okay, whoever won. But because of the interim, temporary nature of all this, I think a lot of people, Householder including, see this as a way to just kind of hold out and just keep delaying it until his time comes in November.
Well, you reap what you sow.
Yeah, and a number of his folks that he was backing in the primaries won. So if those same folks win in the fall, then Larry Householder is going to have power in the state house whether he's speaker or not.
The Democrats are in the unique and unusual role of actually having some influence for a change, but they're not entirely sure how to use it or if they want to use it. Leader Strayhorn from the Dayton area says that, these guys, the Republicans have a big enough caucus, they can iron this out themselves, and they're hesitant to throw their support behind either Ryan Smith or Andy Thompson or somebody else who's in contention, just, with the knowing that there's this FBI investigation hanging out there and they're not sure who's going to get, how deep or how wide it's going to go.
Andy Thompson is the state rep from Marietta who would serve as an interim. He's leaving. He would serve just to the end of the term, and then he's term limited and would leave the House.
And he's considered the proxy for Householder.
Well, that's what Ryan Smith says.
Right.
Right.
Could the editorials, the columnists have been slamming Larry Householder now for the past 2 weeks. It's gotten even more intense in the past week. Could this fight backfire on him in his fight to become Speaker in January? Could he become so toxic in the court of public opinion that Republicans would be reluctant to vote for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the risk that he's taking. It's not because editorialists are editorializing. It's because when you're a member of a caucus, you're trying to move legislation. There are things you actually care about. And so, if you're creating a situation where just a handful of votes can shut down bills, even some of the most important bills, I think you risk caucus members saying, I don't want to work under this scenario because, let's face it, electing a speaker is really electing a leader among equals, right? And so each member is independently elected, has its own power base, and they go to their constituents saying that they want to accomplish certain things. So if the leader is an impediment to them accomplishing what they told the voters they were going to go and accomplish, it might backfire.
Yeah. We all assume Republicans are going to hold on to the House in November, and then a Republican would serve as Speaker. But it's not a guarantee. How big of a blue wave would there have to be for the Democrats to take the House? I mean, how big would it have to be?
It would have to be a tsunami.
A real tsunami.
Yeah.
Republicans have a huge majority now. The districts have been gerrymandered.
Listen,
It's 66 out of 99 seats.
Right, absolutely. And so, I think that the Democrats will pick up a few seats, but it's not going to be anywhere near where they need to be in order to retake the House, and especially in the Senate where there's only 9 members. That's not going to happen either.
Because we're all just assuming that the Republicans will win. We just want to make sure that we get that out there, that it is likely, very likely at least. Governor Kasich wants Ohio lawmakers to take what he calls reasonable steps to tighten Ohio's gun laws. Lawmakers appear ready to loosen the state's gun laws. If the House comes back into session, members will consider a so-called stand your ground law. It would remove the duty to retreat requirement when confronted with a threat in public spaces. It would also shift the burden of proof in self-defense cases from defendants to prosecutors. Derek, does this once again show that the legislature is in no mood to do what John Kasich wants to do in gun control and wants to go the other direction?
Well, I think the legislature sees the governor as a lame duck, so they're utilizing that power right now. And the bill that you're talking about is House Bill 228, and I think that was the bill that was sponsored by Rep. Johnson and Representative LaTourette. And 27 other states have enacted this law across the country, and Ohio's looking to pass this law as well. The problem is we don't have a leader in the House. So until that is rectified, then this bill is still going to be on the back burner. It has passed out of House committee, but you know, we have to elect the speaker first, and then all the other bills that are in front of it are going to have to get their due diligence. And so I don't know if this bill is actually going to move or.
If it goes to the floor, it'll be the first time a Stand Your Ground bill gets a vote in the Ohio House. I think that the one important thing is it actually has some support from the Ohio Public Defender's Office, because this idea of shifting the burden of proof in a self-defense case, it would put Ohio in line with all the other states. Right now, the burden of proof is the other.
Yeah, I thought the burden
we're
of
an
proof was
outlier.
always on the prosecutor. But in a self-defense case right now, the defendant has to prove that he or she was in fear for
Yes.
their lives.
Right.
And that's why they did what they did.
Right, exactly.
So the idea here is that if we do get a new House Speaker and there is legislation to be made and policy work done, I think that it is possible for this to be called to the floor. And I think this kind of harkens back to the idea of the Democrats do have some power. Maybe they could throw their support behind a Republican. But then what happens if they support somebody like Ryan Smith and then he calls up a bill like Stand Your Ground that they're very much against? I think they could be tagged with supporting legislation like that, supporting different legislation that Democrats don't want. And so I think that just goes back to what kind of strength the Democrats have. But I think that Stand Your Ground is something that could very likely pass the House sometime soon.
Yeah, and even if it passes the House, there's another obstacle. The governor said back in February that he would not, he would veto this bill if it came to his desk.
I think it's got a long road to go before it gets to his desk, though.
The merits of it, Shannon, I mean, we have the castle doctrine. If somebody comes into your home or to your car and you feel threatened, you can use your gun and defend yourself. Why not be able to do that if you're walking down the street or in a park? Does Ohio need this law to protect
Well,
those
I mean,
folks?
that's what the proponents are arguing, obviously. And so, you know, I don't know what the answer is, but I would certainly say that, you know, what's lacking is a real discussion about all of these issues. And we don't really have a good forum to do that in right now, at least in the House. You know, I supported the Castle Doctrine when I was in the House, and that's certainly reasonable to me. You break into my home, I can protect my home. So I'm just not familiar enough with what the harms are, but I certainly appreciate what the public defenders are saying about the shifting of the burden of proof. But the bigger point is we need to be having robust conversation, and that's not happening in the dysfunction that exists today.
I mean, the Trayvon Martin case was a case of this. I'm not sure what Florida's law was at the time. I forget. I remember
I think they did have
They had
Stand Your
they
Ground.
did have
Stand
Stand Your
Yes.
Ground,
And that's
part of the
played a
reason why
role.
he was acquitted. So there's your classic national case on this law.
Another thing to consider is that you do have the bill that has a lot of Governor Kasich's gun control measures in it. If there was a way that maybe legislators would think about amending some of his provisions into the Stand Your Ground bill to make it more likely that he would sign it, that's something to look out for. I think that's, again, a huge if.
Compromise at the State House? Andy?
What, have you not seen that lately?
Novel.
All right, let's get to our next topic, medical marijuana. This week, the state was supposed to announce 57 locations where Ohioans could get medical marijuana with a prescription. The Ohio Board of Pharmacy said it is not ready and delayed that announcement until next week. Whether the state is ready to start its medical marijuana program remains in question just 3 months before it's required to do so. Still to be done, growers have to come online, testing facilities have to be licensed, dispensaries chosen and licensed, and oh yeah, you have to give the marijuana time to grow, right, Andy?
Right.
Where are we now as far as the actual process of getting marijuana grown and into the hands of those who need it?
We're all messed up at this point because there's been delays on almost every single step of the way. Like you said, the growers still need to grow it, and that's been delayed. People need to sell it, and that's been delayed. So it is kind of a question of how big of an opening it's going to be when people can sell marijuana. But I do think that there will be some. I think it's still going to roll out on time. It's just going to be a very soft opening. It's not going to be anything really big. Where you're gonna see
There'll just be like a couple little buds for sale.
right, like a farmer's market.
How long does it take to grow a marijuana plant? Can you go to Lowe's and get a starter, and we don't have to plant?
Well, I don't know a lot about the agriculture part of everything, but I mean, there are methods of taking stock and growing it a little bit faster. It's not as strong, but
It's more important that they get it right. I
Yeah.
mean, this is not an insignificant industry that voters have allowed to come into the state. And there's all sorts of challenges from, how do you bank this? What are the feds going to do? The least of which is, on the supply side, will they be able to grow it? Those suppliers will figure that out. This is a big business. It's more important that they get this right.
And you're totally right. It's very, very important that you get it right. And I think everybody wants that, especially the people who are in support of medicinal marijuana, because they see this as the first big step to really tear the stigma away from what marijuana means. So even if it's the tiniest opening of all time of selling marijuana to somebody, that can be the first step to a lot of bigger things for these supporters.
Laura, they've had 2 years to get it right since the voters approved this.
Well, actually, the voters didn't approve it. It was the
legislators,
legislators.
yeah.
The lawmakers approved it, and they put this deadline in, and it takes effect 2 years from when the law took effect. So, there's a lot of work to be done on this. Like Shannon said, it's not just like an easy thing. This is a brand new industry, and they've had to write all these regulations and do all the background checks on people, and they've had hiccups along the way, and they kind of knew that they were going to have some issues. That's been the case. That's been the pattern in other states as well, where there's been challenges and.
Well, and certainly we had some of that when the gaming became open in Ohio.
Right.
So they were really confined by what the amendment said, and I think there's some learnings from that experience and how to avoid those kinds of circumstances.
The dispensaries are going to be the most forward-facing thing that we all see, I think, as we're driving down the street. Like there's 60 around the state. Like there's 5 approved for Franklin County. So they're not going to be in every street corner, but where are they going to be? What are they going to look like? Are they going to be like fancy pharmacies or like little, do we know yet what they're going to look
Lemonade stands?
like? Yeah. They'll have cool names, I'm sure.
I went out to Seattle and did some reporting for the Dayton Daily on how the medical marijuana and the recreational marijuana industries work out there, and the storefronts they kind of look like just your. Not like a big CVS where they're selling all this other stuff.
Right.
They only sell the medical marijuana in those shops, and they have a lot of security, and they also have a lot of air filtration, so that when you're outside, it doesn't smell like pot. You go inside, and it definitely smells like marijuana.
It does. It just and when you look at the storefront, it's just a little off. It kind of sticks out just a little bit because it's not. It almost looks like a low rent pharmacy shop because it has like a smaller sign and everything.
Well, and some states have regulations on what kind of advertising they're allowed to do. So they can't have like Joe Camel out front dancing, saying, "Come on in, come on in."
What's his name's available? Buddy?
Oh, Buddy.
The mascot from the marijuana vote?
That's right.
Conspiracy theorists say the state is deliberately dragging its feet because some state officials don't want this to happen. Do you buy any of that, Derek?
I don't buy that at all. I think that the legislature spoke. They said that they wanted this. The rules are in place in terms of when this needs to be up and running. I agree with Andy that it may not be the full rollout, but there's definitely going to be some sort of rollout by the September deadline, and so I don't buy into that.
Or roll up.
Roll up.
No, you can't do that. It's all edibles
That's right.
or drops. Anyway, it's only the start of June, but the fall campaign is starting to percolate a little more. Sherrod Brown is out of the gate with 2 negative TV ads attacking his opponent, Jim Renacci. In the race for governor, Richard Cordray is cultivating union support around the state. His opponent, Mike DeWine, picked up a union endorsement this week. And when asked if he would support so-called right-to-work legislation to prohibit mandatory union dues, DeWine said right to work is not on his agenda, not at all. Shannon Jones, you still have the scars from fights with public unions. What would your advice be to Mike DeWine when answering that question?
Look, Mike DeWine has been absolutely consistent on this issue, and I, more than anybody, know this for a fact. He didn't support Senate Bill 5. He has been a longtime supporter of police and fire and their ability to collectively bargain, and so none of this is surprising. I think it's just disappointing for Democrats because they're trying to.
But why not say, I don't support right to work? Say, instead of saying it's not on my agenda, which is kind of like a bit of a non-denial denial.
I mean, look, this is politics, and so I don't blame him for being a politician any differently than I blame anybody else for being a politician. But I think his record speaks loud and clear, and that's what people need to look at.
It's very consistent with what he said on all sorts of things. Medicaid expansion, well, we're looking into that. He hasn't really gone out on a ledge on a lot of things, so it's sort of consistent for him to say it's not
He's
on my
consistently
agenda.
not answering the question,
Right.
Yeah.
basically.
He said it's not on his agenda, not at all, but that could mean that it's not on his agenda today. It could be on his agenda when he gets elected, or
I think that's a
if he gets elected.
Or a better
You know,
question would be, it's not on your agenda, but if the House and Senate send it up to your desk, are you going to sign it?
Well, Michigan's governor said it wasn't on his agenda. Scott Walker said it wasn't on his agenda, and it was on their agenda eventually.
But in this instance, Mike DeWine actually has a record. And so, you know, political speak is political speak, but you can look directly at his record, which is long on this subject, and I think it speaks for itself.
Laura Sherrod Brown, you can say is a favorite in the U.S. Senate race, right out of the gate with 2 negative ads attacking Jim Renacci. We criticized Mike DeWine for coming out really hard, negative right out of the gate, not doing a positive ad. You surprised that Sherrod Brown is taking the same tack?
Well, oftentimes with new campaigns, you know, they want to come out with a biographical and say who they are. And everybody knows who Sherrod Brown is. He's been on the scene for a really long time, similar to Mike DeWine. And I think that given the last round in which he sustained a lot of attacks from PACs and dark money, I think that he's decided to take a more defensive posture
Yep.
right from the get-go.
The negative ads have been criticized as misleading. Derek, does this potentially hurt Sherrod Brown?
I don't think it hurts.
Nice guy image if he has one? Or?
I don't think it hurts him at all. I don't know if he has a nice guy image. I think he has an image of being just a real politician, and people trust him. And I think he's tore out a page out of the Republican book of going negative first, you know. So he's talking about, you know, Renacci in his industry of being a lobbyist. So, you know, it is what it is. All the gloves are off when it's campaign season.
Although he didn't lobby when he was in Congress. His staff says it was a paperwork error, or just the lack of filing of paperwork or changing the paperwork.
I think that playbook, though, the go negative first, it's used by the Democrats and the Republicans. I don't think it's a Republican playbook.
I just think there are fewer Democrats that are incumbents in the state right now, so it may
because
feel like
Sherrod Brown is the only one.
Right, and so
Sherrod Brown is the only statewide Democratic office
That's
holder
right.
in Ohio.
And so what you have is a strategy where the candidate is well known that's running the ads, and they don't want to give their opponent an opportunity to find themselves. So
Best offense is the defense. That's
Yeah,
what he's saying,
absolutely.
football, perhaps. Let's get to our off-the-record final parting shots. Shannon Jones, you're up first.
Well, we're excited in Cincinnati that FC Cincinnati is going to be part of the MLS, and we hope that it actually helps the Crew stay here, because I think it would be a fantastic rivalry in sports.
All right, Derek.
Columbus is now the fourth fastest growing city in the country. And so that says that we're no longer a mid-sized city, we're a big city with promise.
All right, Andy.
If we have a House Speaker, it's likely that payday lending is going to be a big issue that goes to the floor. And it could be a really big step to crack down on an industry that a lot of people say is offering out predatory lending.
And Laura?
All right, so June 6th is either going to be a really, really short day in which they don't come to a conclusion and they don't pick a speaker and it just gets kicked down the road a little bit, or it's going to be a really long day because they're going to pick a speaker and they'll start moving on some of those 100 or so backlogged bills.
Okay. 8 years ago, I think it was 8 years ago, when Sherrod Brown last ran for 6 years ago, when he ran for re-election, he used the Chevy Cruze as his positive ad. Well, I don't think he'll be using the Chevy Cruze as much this time not because of anything Sherrod Brown has done, because of people wanting SUVs more than small cars. They've cut back the number of workers at the Lordstown, Ohio plant, so Chevy Cruze is not the most positive brand right now for job creation in Ohio. So it will not be in a Sherrod Brown ad this time around. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, and our website, wosu.org/COTR, where you can watch each episode on demand. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.